Well, hey, everybody, this is Robert, and welcome to today's show. Now, something has happened since the COVID pandemic has started and has progressed over time. And what I'm seeing, and it's really quite frightening, is a lot of people are really showing some tyrannical impulses since this pandemic started. I don't know if these were underlying impulses they always had and they just never came out. And now is a safe time to do it. But people, a lot of people, really do feel like authority should be doing a lot of things that are antithetical to the United States of America and the Constitution. So I want to go ahead and take a look at uh, some of the things I've read recently and share them with you. I'll be quoting some stuff, and I will link in the show notes to the actual pieces so you can check them out for yourself. So let me go ahead and start out with there was a recent Rasmussen Report survey where they were questioning more than 1,000 people divided on political party about what they thought about what different proposals and different actions that should be taken over COVID-19, the vaccine, and other aspects of it. Let's take a look at some of these. Well, it says 58% of voters would oppose a proposal for federal or state governments to fine Americans who choose not to get a COVID-19 vaccine. However, 55% of Democratic voters would support such a proposal. 55% of Democratic voters would support a proposal to fine Americans. Then it gets worse. 59% of Democratic voters would favor a government policy requiring that citizens remain confined to their home at all times, except for emergencies, if they refuse to get vaccinated. I don't know about you, but this is very, very frightening stuff. And it's very hard to believe that people you work with, people that you may associate with outside of work, people that you may be friends with, actually maybe thinking some of this policy is the way to go. Family and friends, who knows? And it goes on. About half of Democratic voters think that federal and state governments should be able to fine or imprison individuals who publicly question the efficacy of the existing COVID-19 vaccines on social media, television, radio, other types of media outlets. So half of Democratic voters think if you question the COVID-19 vaccine, you should be able to be imprisoned. It's just, I mean, what has happened to our country? What has happened to the way people think? 45% of Democrats would favor governments requiring citizens to temporarily live in designated facilities if they refuse to get vaccinated. Temporarily live in designated facilities. That just sounds totally frightening too. How do you get to this point where you think this is the way to go? I think this is the last quote I got from the Rasmussen survey. And like I said, I will go ahead and link to it in the show notes. It says, while about 2/3 of likely voters would be against governments using digital devices to track unvaccinated people to ensure that they are quarantined or socially distanced from others, almost half of Democrats, 47%, favor a government tracking program for those who won't get the COVID-19 vaccine. Okay, so I mean, we're seeing a trend here, right? It appears to be one select group of U.S. voters, and I just can't believe that people are that want to use these authoritarian powers on their fellow citizens. It just boggles my mind. And it gets better. It gets better, right? This is from the Salt Lake Tribune. And the title of the article was Utah Leaders Have Surrendered to COVID Pandemic. The editorial board writes. So this is the editorial board of, I don't know, is this the largest paper in Utah? It very well may be. And here's a couple of statements out of the editorial. President Joe Biden tried to pull a couple of useful levers by ordering vaccine mandates for healthcare workers and vaccine or test rules for workplaces of more than 100 people, 100 employees. The U.S. Supreme Court this week upheld the former while quashing the latter, foolishly holding that a communicable disease is not a workplace hazard. If that was their logic, I would probably disagree with it too. I'm hoping that the Supreme Court said, no, the federal government does not have the authority to mandate vaccines. They do not have police powers. That is up to the states and the localities. Now, they did allow mandates for the healthcare workers by using facilities that get Medicare dollars, Medicaid dollars, government dollars. Those employees have to be vaccinated. And what they wanted to do, of course, with the other one, the workplace one, was use the power of OSHA. Fortunately, the Supreme Court, at least temporarily, said nay to that. However, they did go along with the healthcare workers mandate. Then it goes on and says, were Utah a truly civilized place? If only it was a truly civilized place, the governor's next move would be to find a way to mandate the kind of mass vaccination campaign we should have launched a year ago. Going as far as to deploy the National Guard to ensure that people without proof of vaccination would not be allowed anywhere. So the editorial board of this large paper in Utah said, bring out the soldiers. And if you can't show you're vaccinated, well, you're not allowed to move anywhere around the state. That's what they're saying. I'm hoping other people are seeing problems with this, right? Between this and the Rasmussen report. Okay, and let's go on to what I have next. Bioethicist, I'll condemn them. I'll shame them. I'm blaming them. Well, the guy on the right there is Arthur Kaplan. He is from the New York University Grossman School of Medicine. He's a bioethicist, and he's a rather popular one, as far as bioethicists go. So while you turn on cable news and you're going to see Fauci and you're going to see Peter Hotez on TV, these are like our TV doctors now, right? If there's such a thing as a TV bioethicist, Art Kaplan is it. And these are some of the quotes out of this interview he had on CNN rather recently. Other than saying he'll condemn them and shame them and blame them, he said, we can penalize them more. That's the unvaccinated. We could say you got to pay more on your hospital bill if you weren't vaccinated. You can't get life insurance, disability insurance at affordable rates if you're not vaccinated. Goes on to say that companies should not treat the vaccinated and the unvaccinated as equals. What do you think about that? A bioethicist? What do you think about that? I'd love to hear more about that. Okay, and let's see if I can play a little bit on this. Okay, this is actually a picture. I'm sorry, but this is Arthur Kaplan. I think this is in October of last year, and in this talk on Medscape, and of course, like I said, I'll link to it below. He said it's okay for doctors to refuse to treat unvaccinated patients. Now, to be fair, that's the title of it, but what he actually said was it's okay for like primary care physicians to not accept patients that are unvaccinated. However, he did say that, if it's an ER visit, emergency department visit, yeah, they should be treated. But again, how ethical? How ethical is that? Should we be treating people differently over a vaccine? Should we? Do we do that? We do that with other diseases? Okay. And this is thank goodness, and it was a little bit of a surprise too. The Atlantic actually had a recent article that kind of counters some of the things that Professor Kaplan is saying. It says it's a terrible idea to deny medical care to unvaccinated people. And I think the author was Ed Young. He's very famous for his coverage of the COVID pandemic. Agree with him or not. And but in this particular article, he got some quotes from some bioethicists, and they had a few other things to say that are a little contrary to Professor Kaplan. It says it's an understandable response out of frustration and anger, and it is completely contrary to the tenets of medical ethics, which have stood pretty firm since the Second World War. Matt Wynia, a doctor and ethicist at the University of Colorado, told me, "We don't use the medical care system as a way of meting out justice. We don't use it to punish people for their social choices. The matter is pretty cut and dry," says Sarah Murray, a hospitalist at UC San Francisco, who said, "We have an ethical obligation to provide care for people regardless of the choices they made. And that stands true for our unvaccinated patients." So yeah, if you're reading these, or if you're listening to these quotes and or reading them along with me, and you see this came from the Atlantic, it almost tells you there's a little bit of hope left, right? There are people that are saying, man, you can't be treating these people as second class citizens because they didn't get a shot in the arm. So again, I'll link to this article too, and I encourage you to check each of them out, and the videos of Professor Kaplan, just to check it out and ask yourself the question: where are we headed? That people will get like, where will they be when the next crisis comes along? How much authoritarian, tyrannical action would they want to take against uh, their fellow citizens that don't agree with them or choose to take a different path? It's pretty frightening stuff. Anyway, I appreciate you all watching the program. I really want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. I hope I didn't rattle you too much, because maybe you weren't aware that some of your fellow Americans are thinking this way. I mean, you can kind of see it on Twitter. You can see some of the, how people almost joyfully, gleefully like it when somebody that's unvaccinated and famous gets sick or die. You can see it on Twitter. It's like it makes you very sad that people are like this. But yeah, there is a chunk of our public that think like this. So just want to give you a fair warning that that's out there. And I'm glad you watched. I appreciate you watching. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, comment below, share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time.